The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Welcome to Aging Horizons. On today's show, we'll be talking about strokes. Particularly, we'll be talking about how the Montana Brain Injury Alliance can help out the individuals and the caregivers understand what resources and support is available to them. Did you know there's over 790,000 Americans who have a stroke every year? That's about one every 40 seconds. So this is important, so stay tuned.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare Summary Notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Receiving help for Ella has been life-changing, and the best word for it is relief. I was the therapist, I was the aide, and I couldn't be the mom because emotionally you're just to your wits' end. You're trying to survive.
I provide care for the Harrises, specifically their daughter Ella. Respite care is extremely challenging, but the rewards that you receive from it are 100 times more than working with a child that doesn't have special needs. Once they get something, it's everything. It's you celebrate. You don't just enjoy those moments. You celebrate every moment that you get, that you guided them to that next step.
Respite. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. Will you provide it? Call 800-224-6034 or visit respite.mt.gov.
It went from survival to enjoying life and being able to be a mom again.
Brought to you by the Montana Broadcasters and this station.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services, the Senior and Long-Term Care Division. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and we're talking about the Brain Injury Association in Montana. So, of course, we have some excellent guests via Zoom joining us today. We have Ty Evers and Sarah Ward from the association. Both of you, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Hi, nice to see you.
Great. Well, let's start at the top. Sarah, you're Brain Injury Association of Montana, but we're talking about strokes. When we talk about strokes, I think a lot of people know the word, but they don't really know it as you would say what it is from a professional viewpoint. Please define what a stroke is to our viewers. Start the discussions here.
Absolutely. So there are actually two different types of strokes that folks suffer from. The first type of stroke is called an ischemic stroke, and that is when there's actually a blood clot in the brain that is preventing blood from moving throughout the brain and supplying the brain with oxygen. And the second type of stroke is a hemorrhagic stroke, and that occurs when you actually have a brain bleed, such as brain aneurysm or a hemorrhage within the brain. And again, that causes damage to brain tissue and is a medical emergency. So strokes usually result in death of brain cells and brain death, which is why it's so important to get treatment as quickly as possible when an individual experiences a stroke.
Okay, and for individuals who, these can come on suddenly, and if an individual is out in the public, how does one maybe identify a stroke if they see what's going on?
Yeah, so there's actually a really handy acronym, and there are a couple of variations of this acronym, but I'm just going to use the really shorter one because it's short, it's easy. The acronym is FAST. Some folks might be familiar with that one already. It's F is going to be face, and so you're going to look for face drooping or changes in the face of an individual, because oftentimes strokes will cause sort of muscle relaxations or issues with, it would be visible on their face if they're having a stroke. The second one is going to be arms. Oftentimes people will notice the entire sides of their body might go numb if they're experiencing a stroke. And so if you think someone's having a stroke, maybe you're noticing vision, face changes, whatever, you can ask them to lift their arms. And if they kind of can't, or they're struggling with one side of their body, that's another really good way to tell if they're having a stroke. The third is going to be the S part of the acronym, and that is for speech. So oftentimes when an individual experiences a stroke, their speech is going to be slurred. And so even just, asking someone like, hey, is everything okay? How are you feeling? And if they respond and maybe they're incoherent or they're slurring their speech, that's another great way to recognize that they're having some type of medical emergency, and it could be a stroke. And the T in that acronym is going to be time. And that's not a symptom, but it's just a reminder that when someone's having a stroke, time equals brain, we like to say. And so the sooner they get treatment, the more likely it is that we can save more brain cells and that their recovery outcomes will be a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I've known some people that said they've gone to their doctor and the doctor said, oh, you've had a number of small strokes, and they did not know that. So I imagine the symptoms can really vary from I didn't notice it to maybe a collapse.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a really good reminder for folks to, make sure that they're going to their primary care doctor, that they're getting those appointments, that even if they experience maybe some unusual vision changes or headaches or balance issues, all of that could be a sign that something's going on. So just to be really aware of those smaller things too, because you absolutely have a point. A stroke could be something that someone could experience and maybe not even realize it. Or it could, totally be debilitating and life-changing immediately. And so there's a big range there.
Yeah. Well, now the FAST acronym seems that third parties notice it in another individual maybe before the individual notices it. Is that typical? Or?
Yeah, that can absolutely be the case. And it can also be perhaps that, a stroke can be really confusing to the individual who's experiencing it. And so they might not even really be able to communicate or fully, get the attention of the folks that they're with, that they're having a stroke. And so it's kind of just helping other people notice. There was a story that was published by the American Heart Association last year of this little girl, actually, who was just 7 years old. And she was doing a puzzle with her grandmother, and her grandmother started to have sort of issues with mobility. And she noticed her face was sort of looked different, and she was slurring her words. And this little girl had actually just done stroke training in school and was able to identify immediately that her grandmother was having a stroke, and was able to get medical treatment, and her grandmother survived. And so, it's absolutely critical that we educate other people, because perhaps the grandmother just was like, oh, maybe I have low blood sugar, I'm feeling a little off, but other people in the room can help folks out and get them treatment. Yeah.
Well, you bring up a good topic there. What age range can one expect strokes? Or there's a particular age that is typical, or?
Yeah, this has been one of the most eye-opening things for Ty and I when we're working on this project. I hadn't really done a ton of work with strokes before we started this program. And so what we realized is that stroke affects anyone. We like to think of stroke as, it just affects folks who are, elderly or who might have some other health issues going on. But, we've worked with folks who are about my age, like women who are probably in their 20s who've experienced a stroke. And so stroke can affect anyone. There's even instances of pediatric stroke, little kids experiencing stroke, and those symptoms are a little different. So the FAST acronym wouldn't really apply as often for, people under the age of 18, but strokes really can impact anyone at any point in time, which is why they're so important. Yeah.
We know this first segment has gone by so quickly, but we've well defined what a stroke is, I believe, so we're aware of that. In our next segment, we'll be talking about how the Brain Injury Alliance can help support the individual with a stroke and the caregiver. That's so important when they're back home, maybe on the road to recovery. What resources are available in the Brain Injury Alliance? They're there for you, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With as many as 1 in 10 Americans at risk for Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, chances are someone you know and love will receive that diagnosis. When that happens, you may well feel devastated, but know that you are not alone. Help is available. You don't have to face dementia by yourself. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
It's been 27 years. I never thought I'd still be smoking, but here I am, COPD and all. I'm about to have a granddaughter. There's so much to show her, but I'm scared I won't be able to keep up like I used to. I kind of gave up on myself on quitting. But it's different now. I want to be here for her and for my daughter.
Every generation produces heroes, men and women who step forward to defend our country in time of need, no matter the personal cost to themselves. And though we can never fully repay them, we can make sure they have access to low-cost, long-term care when they need it. That's what Montana's Veterans Homes are all about. If you've got a hero in need in your family, call us. We can help.
Sergeant Jones. Please respond. I was separated from my squad. Requesting backup. Anyone? Please respond. I'm all alone here.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and continuing our discussion about strokes. 790,000 Americans have a stroke every year, which figures out to about 1 every 40 seconds. And it's an issue right here in Montana. Unfortunately, we have the Brain Injury Association of Montana. We have our two guests, which work with them. Our excellent guests is Sarah Ward and Ty Evers. And Ty, let's start with you. You know, the Brain Injury Association of Montana, you guys saw a problem, and then you decided, let's organize and let's help address this issue. Tell us the history of that and how it serves stroke people in Montana.
Yeah, so we kind of saw an issue that the resources across the state can be pretty slim or hard to access. And so we thought, we heard from many people that they really needed some support and some help from people that understood. That's kind of the kicker there, is that people that understand what they're going through, just because stroke can be so different for everybody. So we decided to create a program that's a peer mentorship program over the phone. And basically what we do is we pair up a kind of recent stroke survivor with a stroke survivor that is farther into their recovery. And then they can develop a relationship, talk about their experiences with their stroke, and maybe trade resources from the person, the volunteer, of where they can go, who they can chat with, and just having a friend that understands them. One of the most common things that we've heard is, well, I just wish that someone understood what I was going through, and I wish that someone that understood would tell me that it's going to be okay. And so that was really the goal, was to, pair people up so that they have some resources in that sense.
Yeah, and you have an 800 number we have on the screen, but when you said that someone understands me, I mean, that is a real good phrase. You have a health issue and you think you might be the only one with it. And I think you, as an individual who has a stroke, they have frustration with themselves, with the medical community, and with their caregivers. But you also offer support to the caregivers too, don't you?
Yes, we have decided to open it up to caregivers as well, just because it can be so tough for, a lot of people, their wives or their husbands or their caregivers. Not everyone has like a hired caregiver. And so we did open it up to caregivers because we started to hear a lot of the same things from them. You know, you don't have as much time for yourself, or you don't know if you're doing a good job. And so we did open it up just so that they could hear, you know, those same things, like, you're doing good, you know, here's some things you can do to feel like you have a little bit more individual time as well, but still doing, you know, what you're wanting to do. So we did open that up, and that has been a really awesome opportunity for everyone as well.
I know we've had individuals with Alzheimer's support groups on here, and they say it's so important that you're not figuring out this program or figuring out how to work with your loved ones or the caregivers by yourself. You have other people, and they can inject resources and maybe even assistance, right? I mean, that you're not even aware of.
Exactly. That's something that we commonly hear as well. And I would say that many stroke survivors don't really kind of go through a period where they don't really understand that they may not ever be necessarily the same, and their caregivers don't necessarily know how to kind of explain that to them in a way that it's, you know, they're going to fully grasp it, that, you know, I may be a little bit different and there may be issues, but a lot of times most people, you know, if they get that support and they get that help, caregivers and stroke survivors, they can kind of come to terms with that and learn kind of a new way to live after that.
Yeah, and to approach the problem and know that the solutions are out there. They don't have to figure them out. Well, now, you have a website and you have an 800 number. Let's talk about the website. What kind of resources can they access at the website on the screen?
Yeah, so for our stroke program, you can, well, I guess if you go straight to our website, we've got some statistics. You know, we give away helmets and everything for children. We've got everyone that's on our team, our board members. And then if you go to our stroke section, that is where you can find all of the information that we offer regarding our stroke program. And then from there, we have a form to fill out. So if you fill out that, it's called an interest form. You fill out that interest form, it's actually going to come directly to me in my email, and then I will reach out and start mailing you things right away, and we'll get you right on into it and matched up with a volunteer.
Mm-hmm. And then how does your 800 number complement the services that you provide from the website?
Yeah, so our 800 number is actually, it's basically the same as our office number. It's just the toll-free version. Mm-hmm. So that's going to come directly to one of us, and, you know, we'll be able to help you from there as well. It's really more of a preference on the number, I think, there. And Sarah, you can elaborate if I am wrong on the toll-free.
Nope, you're totally right. Yep.
Okay.
Well, and it's important to know that this is available to all Montanans statewide, correct? I mean, it's a statewide resource.
Yes, this is statewide. We've got people all over right now. You know, we've got Billings, we've got Helena, we've got all over. I think we have some in Anaconda. So, yeah.
Great. And then this is also a resource for professional I'll say caregivers or business people that have that provide services to individuals. Imagine if you have a client that's had a stroke episode, that they would want to refer them to you for the additional resources that you can provide. Well, now we've drawn to a close on our second segment so quickly, and thank you for everything, but a point we'd also like to keep making is, you sense a stroke in yourself or a loved one, time is of the essence. They have certain medications that need to be applied immediately. Do not be afraid to take them to the hospital. We got a lot more great information. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Today, class, we'll be discussing the term ombudsman, a word we borrowed from the Swedes and never gave back. Say you're a resident or you have a loved one in long-term care. Now, what do you do if you're not happy with the care and services you receive? You call your long-term care ombudsman, of course. Your ombudsman is available to support you and your rights. An advocate on your behalf could be the ticket. This is your home. If you have questions, the numbers right there below me have all the answers. Class dismissed.
I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1992, and I went into denial. It made me angry. I was a professional chef, and I didn't want to change my eating style. It took me a long time to get serious about managing my health. My perspective changed from resentment to one of loving my body, the container for my spirit. Getting help from my diabetes educator supported my goals of improved self-care. I want to feel good and have a great life. My diabetes educator helps me do this.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are.
Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
More fuels, more fires, more fear. You don't have to live in the forest to be threatened by wildfire. In 18 years, the number of fires per year has increased by 1,000 and tripled the acreage burned. Turn it around. Advocate for forest management. Form a group. Craft a plan. Mitigate the fire hazard. You and your community can't dismiss the trend, but you can mitigate the risk. FireSafeMT.org can help. Paid for by FireSafe Helena and aired by the Montana Broadcasters Association.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and we're continuing our discussion about the Brain Injury Alliance of Montana, particularly as it focuses on individuals who are stroke survivors and their caregivers. So, Ty, let's start kind of at the top. We have an 800 number that you were encouraging people to call in. They'll probably talk to you. What does a typical call look like?
So when you sign up for our program, we're going to set you up on a phone call with our volunteers. And what that looks like is after we've gone through the process of, just finding out a little bit about you and who is going to be the best option to pair you with, then we have our phone calls. And what that looks like is basically your first phone call is going to be myself, you, and your volunteer, so that then I am there for any help that you might need. So from there, I typically will call one person, kind of chat with them, go over, I'll usually call like the volunteer, go over, do you have any questions for me? Do you have, kind of an idea of some things that you might want to ask or tell them about already with your own experience? And then I will typically add in our survivor, and from there I will talk one-on-one with them as well. Is there any questions you have for me before we begin? Have you thought of, any questions you might have for your volunteer? And then from there I will kind of merge the phone calls and introduce them, and I might say a couple little things to them just to get the conversation going, and then I'll kind of back off and I'll just be in the background if they need me. And from there, typically, our volunteers have gone through our training program, and so far everyone's done wonderful. And they will ask questions, how are you feeling? How are your emotions? Is there anything you're struggling with? Is there anything you might need from me? And then they'll go from there and just try and build on those conversations and exchange resources and validate each other. And and then from there, we may schedule another call or agree to swap contacts to keep in touch. And they may not even need me in their next phone calls. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, now, Sarah, or Ty, actually, Sarah's mentioned a couple times a volunteer. And volunteers are important with any organization, but the volunteers that you like to see is someone who is a long-term survivor, right?
Yeah, so our volunteers are going to be stroke survivors that have already kind of gone through their recovery process, and they're to that point where they're confident, for the most part, in where they are in the process. That being said, they could still have issues or just things that they're dealing with. But I think that that's also really great because they can still validate, like, hey, I go through that too, and this is how I handle it. But yeah, Sarah, do you have anything else to say on volunteers?
Yeah.
I don't have too much to add. I do think, that folks who maybe even still need support and don't quite feel ready to volunteer, if you had a stroke even 3 or 4 years ago and maybe you're still feeling like you need a little extra support, you don't have to jump into the program as a volunteer. Like, your time out from your stroke doesn't immediately disqualify you from being a participant. So if you are a longer term stroke survivor, both options are open to you. So being a volunteer sounds great. We'd love to have you. Or if you kind of want to go through the program yourself and then volunteer later, that's also a great option. So yeah, just be in contact with us, and there's no like hardline rules at all for what you can do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now, Sarah, we're talking about volunteers, and I guess I'm hearing that there's 2 tiers there, that maybe an individual that when a person calls in, they can talk to them on the phone, but you also have groups or support groups that meet in different locations, and you probably need volunteers there, and that might be easier for a long-term survivor, huh?
Yeah, we absolutely have a couple of support groups across the state. And how it works actually is that an individual support group, so, there are groups in Helena, Billings, Great Falls, those support groups aren't directly affiliated with us, but we are happy to direct individuals to those independent support groups. Mm-hmm. And we absolutely always, those support groups are always looking for volunteers to sub in as facilitators, to host the meetings, to help with food for the meetings. And so if you are looking for a more local support group, definitely give us a call on that 800 number, and we'd be more than happy to give you the information for the support group in your area. We also offer a support group that meets every other Wednesday at 6 p.m. And it actually meets over Zoom, which is really great because you can be anywhere in the state and just call in using your computer or cell phone. And that group is called the Montana Puzzle Club. We've actually discussed it before on Aging Horizons a few years ago. But yeah, that group is still up and running, and we're always looking for folks, if you have a story you want to share, or if you'd like to facilitate a support group session, please again give us a call, and we'd be happy to work with you on that. So yeah, support groups are great. Yeah. Great options. Yes.
Great. And I know, like with Zoom, you don't have to show your image if you don't want to, if you have some appearance concerns. But what's important is you can talk to the other people. But now, Ty, you also have a Facebook club, I guess I'll say, or page. What's on the Facebook page, and how does that help the survivors?
Yeah, so our Facebook page is wonderful. That's going to be the quickest way to get any information right now. We're going to post about our events. We're going to post about the virtual support group. We're going to post about links to access the stroke program. Really any updates that you're looking for, you can find on our page. Sarah manages that currently, and she's really wonderful about, having everything up and easy to access.
That's great. Well, we've drawn to a close on the show, and first of all, I'd like to thank you both for your efforts at reaching out in Montana to people who have survived a stroke and their caregivers. Your resources are very valuable, and you help people out, and you never maybe fully realize how wonderful your help is. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great. And to our viewers, again, we know the signs of a stroke. Medications are available if it's an appropriate application, but time is of the essence for that. If you think someone's having a stroke, if you think you're having a stroke, don't hesitate to get medical care and contact the Brain Injury Alliance of Montana. Thank you for joining us.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.